nation as a point in time in the formation of societies, and so it is pertinent to ask, what is it that drives nation? What are the factors that give make a nation democratic or not? Can we how can we look at the idea of nation and nation building from as not something taken for granted, but as something that is in formation? That is why I like the term imagination. How do you imagine the nation as a social formation? Yes, I also agree. I mean, I was quite taken aback and struck by Professor Anand Kumar's very beautiful metaphor that democracies are born with genetic disabilities, okay, everywhere in the world. It's not that it's born perfectly, or it is born with some limitations, and there is also a temporal factor to it. So therefore the imagination becomes very central. Now if you look at sociology in India, I discern two broad trends in the sociology of India, two major approaches, very dominant at a particular point in time to understand nation and state. And while I tell you a little bit about those two approaches, I would like to place the perspectives of Professor Anand Kumar against this intellectual discourse, where I see the significance of his perspectives in these broad categories. So sociology in India has in the 80s and 90s oscillated between two major approaches. One is you have society is driven what I called a state centric perspective. The other is a culture centric perspective. The state centric perspectives think that society, by society today we mean the nation, and it has to be driven by modern institutions, bureaucratic institutions based on rational and legal authority. You will all recall your Max Weber and bureaucracy. So basically the Weberian model of modernity and modern institutions, and looking at the state as an icon part of bureaucratic governance, administration, and so on. So you have a state centric view, and where citizenship is a primary identity of the people living under the nation. And you have the other culture centric perspective, which thinks that state and nation is not the most central thing. Nation is maybe one small part of human evolution. What is central is culture. Culture shapes both personalities and polities, and pluralism, diversity we should look at culture, and state should not be superior to culture. Culture and tradition and diverse respect for pluralism and pluralist traditions is important. State is a monolithic institution. It is reductionist, so it is not the best. It's not the primary institution you should work towards. So you have critical traditionalism, Ashish Nandi kind of scholars in that culturological field, and in the modern legal institutions you have Andre Bete and others. And I will also add, you had a talk on invention of society, Professor Dipankar Gupta. He is very much squarely in the legal school of thought, where from what I've read his works, ontology, he thinks that all this is the primary identity that should be there. Now, but if you look, these are the broad perspectives. There are some meddling perspectives, I'll come to them. But the problems of a very state-centric view of society is that, first, it is speculative. You are starting with an arbitrary point and trying to fit existing societies. It's highly Eurocentric, and it imbibes the ideals of mainstream sociology. Max Weber's rational types of authority are interesting, but they're highly limited. Okay, it is like one Greek king. He had a court made, and he will place every citizen or person in the court. If your leg or head is longer, it will be chopped. Now, what this kind of framework, tight iron clad framework, leads to a classification of societies into pre-modern and modern. Entire centuries of experience of societies, of labor, of artisans, they are all cast in history as pre-modern. I mean, this is the highest level of labeling. It goes against the self-respect and existential experience of many societies. So I'm totally, I highly object to such kind of labels created by sociological theory. So this kind of evolutionary understanding, if we take one parameter as it's utopian, but as the way of understanding societies. Secondly, this state-centric model has also produced a theory of globalization, whereby globalization is nothing but an extension of westernization and the march of capital and technology. But we all know that we are facing a world today, after all this grand theorization about globalization, global village, everybody is one, capital and technology will erase differences. We are living in a world which is full of wars. Here you have full-fledged war based on the basis of religion on another nation. And you are here a huge anti-migrant sentiment in the developed world. Employment and livelihood. Now, where is all that? What were the sociologists doing? Saskia Sassen, let's ask. You have, so they believe, thirdly, they said that all global institutions, IMF, WHO, United Nations, they represent first time in history of having a global world. But all these institutions have proven to be colonial and imperialistic and arm twisting in trade negotiations. I don't need to elaborate that. So this casts a doubt on this kind of linear, very standard understanding of the world today as a march of bureaucratic and rational legal institutions centered on the state or beyond the state. And even within the Marxist perspectives, though they criticize this, they see this as, this is how capital is supposed to behave. I mean, so whatever you are seeing is a behavior of capital. But it is here that I was quite, the point in Anand Kumar's, Professor Anand Kumar's understanding of Gandhi, in one of the talk, he says that rationality can hardly be the criterion for goodness. Goodness and rationality are not the same. Okay? And when he talks about Gandhi, he says there's a lot of bashing, Gandhi bashing today, and there's a lot of bashing of everybody. Means, in fact, you are a great sociologist or a politician or ideologue if you bash somebody. The more you bash somebody, the great. So much so that a student came and told me, tell me 2 points on Foucault and this, I'll finish my friend in the mess. So that is power, to flaunt 2 theories and bash 3 people. So rationality is not equal to goodness, he says. And there is no incentive to goodness if you in a rational legal authority. It's very mechanical. You can do like Hitler's whatever happened during the all the massacre of the Jews. It was totally rational and legal. It was proceeded. So there is no incentive to goodness, and therefore you need pure rationality is not going to help society. You need some kind of a moral framework to believe in human perfectibility. This I want to underscore because it is reflected in Professor Anand Kumar's talk on Gandhi, and I think it's a very important characteristic of social thought in South Asia, irrespective of ideological differences, which believes in the moral core or perfectibility of human nature. And that is why, whether it is Gandhi or it is Ambedkar, who differed with Gandhi on many respects, Ambedkar wrote a beautiful paper on Buddha and Karl Marx. He did not think that it is enough to have a social revolution to uplift the oppressed people. He wanted Buddhism. Why did he turn to a religion? Why did he search so extensively for a moral framework? He wanted to look for a rational religion, but he did not think rationality, constitution, etc. itself will redeem this deep inequality produced by the caste system. So this the need to have a moral core that comes either from spirituality, you don't need to have a godhead, but you need to have a moral framework. This is the distinguishing mark between social thought in this part of the world and the other part of the world. Even there were differences in perspectives, and very much appreciate this point underscored by Professor Anand Kumar while he spoke about Gandhi, that rationality alone is not enough, it is not equal to goodness. Now then the culture people, the culture schools will be very happy. Yes, that's what we are saying. Let us take religion, let us take culture, it's all there in religion, etc. So that has its own problem. Culture is not a thing that you can hold in your hand and fill yourself with. It is something that is being created. It has both material and non-material aspects, and it can transcend time periods. Something of the past can become relevant today, something today cannot exist. So culture, treating culture as a substance that can be held, and authenticity, making claims to authenticity is very dangerous. It can lead to unbridled fundamentalisms, and it can lead to fragmentation. So what you think as culture today is nothing but fragments and neo-traditionalisms of the past that we hold on as culture. So the culture school has to understand that modern institutions have to be taken seriously. You can, in the name of culture, we can't ignore the bureaucratic, rational, legal aspect of modern institutions. The state is a very important reality in South Asia as in India, and it has much more deeper connections with society and culture than it ever had in Europe at the time of its formation. And therefore, we need a perspective in between these. What is the perspective that will respect both? So we have many approaches in the Indian sociological writings itself. You have the approach of JPS Uberoi on civil society and religion. You have social movements, Professor T.K. Uman. Again, social movements is a very crucial and important contribution of Indian sociological thinking in this part of the world, because earlier everybody thought the revolution is finally going to come. So anything short of a revolution is not worth considering at all. Let's wait for the revolution. People are suffering, we'll wait for the revolution. I mean, it's going to happen. So you have that that was a Marxist perspective, which was highly sensitive to the social ills, but it waited for a massive revolution to happen. And throughout world over, people were looking at it. Or you had the modernization perspective, which said gradually all these uncivilized societies, so slowly we'll pull them into the modern fold. But the social movement perspective is unique, and it is laden with insights, because social movements have happened in this part of the world over the centuries. Repeatedly, constantly opposition movements opposing caste or opposing religious hegemony have emerged throughout human history, and the national movement in this country is a very big example of how different perspectives from the West, East came together. And therefore, repeatedly, even after independence, this country has been facing social movements. To foreground social movements as key concepts in sociology was a very ingenious move. And then you have in the middle perspective civil society, social movements approach, socialist perspectives, and then Ambedkarite perspectives. But what I find in Professor Anand Kumar's work is a considered irreverence for any ideological or theoretical perspectives. I use the word considered irreverence. So he will tell about everything, but you can never trap in one. Okay, even in his personal, I have seen with hardcore Marxists, he will be talking. He'll talk with people that you consider right wing. He will be with middling groups. He'll be with Ambedkarites. He'll talk to all the big classical sociologists. And like he said in his own talk, nobody will, if you are in one gang, one batch, you will gain a lot more visibility. If you are in every batch, nobody will trust you. But that is the intellectual attitude, friends. I want to underscore here that if you can read any book, any ideology, immerse yourself. But an intellectual attitude to academics and what is happening around you is that you never get trapped in anything. You should have your own, understanding based on your experience, your observation of what is going on around you. The moment somebody parrots or repeats something from a book or something from ideology, there is no intellectual content in that. There is a Tirukkural in Tamil. எப்பொருள் யாரார்வாய் கேட்பினும் அப்பொருள் மெய்ப்பொருள் காண்பது அறிவு. That means whatever you hear from anybody, you should analyze, understand the true meaning, and only then accept it. So in what I want to highlight from these diversity of perspectives is 2 points, two key trends that we need to bring to the understanding of democratic imagination. First is the shift from determinisms to dynamic intersectionality. That's the term he uses in one of his EPW articles on Lohia. That is determinisms. Always we are looking for single cause or two cause. Did this determine that? Did that cause this? Everywhere in historical analysis, is this the cause? That is totally useless attitude to analysis. It's not going to take us anywhere. So dynamic intersectionality of various factors, caste, class, gender, and it's the most challenging task. If you understand this in an Indian context, you can study any society anywhere, let me tell you. Why? Because it's an interlocking matrices of inclusions and exclusions. It works differently in different regions and at different levels. Public policy level, it's different. Organizationally, it's different in class and certain within strata. In different institutions like family, economic institutions, political institutions, these factors, caste, class, and gender, they operate in slightly different ways. And to which the second factor he talks about, the word dynamic, is interesting. It's not intersectionality in itself, because I think I've told my students that I have scant regard for concepts which are descriptive. It should give you analytical leverage to understand something. When you say dynamic intersectionality, you have to understand that none of our views of polity, state, nation, these binaries, pre-modern, modern, are useless because they don't take into account time. France had its French Revolution, but now they are faced with the problem of migrants. So nothing is static. If things change, if economic order changes, way of production changes, then the conditions that happened earlier will, the new problems will emerge. So it is dynamic. The time factor is crucial. Whatever we said about society 50 years ago, we might have to revise in terms of the factors that are playing, even caste, for the way it played out 50 years ago and the way it is playing out in those domains will be very different. There is continuity. There are also new factors emerging. So it is not that economic growth will linear erase caste or gender oppressions. In fact, we are seeing throughout the world, and especially in India, that there is a very peculiar dynamic between them. No linear view will help. No non-dynamic or static labels as this is developed, this is underdeveloped, we have reached democracy, etc. is going to help. So determinism to dynamism and interplay over time, because India is a society, Indian is a civilization that has been there for 3 millennia at least. You have seen the small democratic movements, social movements, extreme authoritarianism, extreme oppression, caste, and also you have had very liberal, profound philosophies. Everything has coexisted, and things has been an ebb and flow. Therefore, simple concepts like pre-modern, post-modern are inadequate to develop, because it has undergone several phases in thinking and in political formations. So to all these complexities, we have neoliberalism, new factors, globalization, and mass media also, which he has looked into. And I don't need to elaborate that, but I can tell you that mass media has created a narrative overload. So much of narration, so much of rhetoric is there, and it can do two things. It can create a hiatus between your experience. You can sit in the room and without going in the field or meeting with anybody, you can engage with mass media, or you can be in the field and do it. So it does create a hiatus between your virtual world and your real world, and it has its own consequences. But it can also give rise to an uprising, as it did in Nepal. The Gen Z movement is a very good example of how the mass media has tried to connect different realities. But it remains to be seen in whose hand, how, and what is happening. So I will, what I wanted to highlight on democratic imagination is that while there are different schools of thought looking for one or two causes, the best approach will be to be eclectic, conceptually eclectic. You should understand and read all the theories and concepts, but the realities that are in front of us are much more complex than any one theoretical framework can explain. And so you have a considered irreverence. You should understand the theories, you should know everything thoroughly, but don't allow your head to be conditioned only by this and say everybody else is wrong, everything else is wrong. That is not an intellectual attitude. That's what we see when we are creating a democratic imagination. It has to be realistic, it has to be staggered. You have to understand that reality is stratified, it's not one homogeneous. What is true of the macro policy level may not be true of what is happening within the individual. So it depends where you are looking at and how you straddle these different levels. It requires a certain openness of perspective, and that is what we have been hearing in the morning. To come to public sociology and wind up, how much time do we have?
We have already exceeded the time.
So we have only?
Exceeded the time.
Okay. So I will finish. I'm ready. I have my points. So public sociology hitherto has been thought of as spreading or giving the ideas of sociology to a non-sociological audience. It is an expert-centered view. That is, sociology has the expertise to understand society. You go and, like the scientist is educating the people, you educate. But true public sociology, in my view, is a reversible relationship between the sociologist and the society, where you absorb the viewpoints, ideas of members of society and you critique them, but you cannot form a theory or idea of society which is one way. You theorize about them and dilute it and give it to them. It should be a two-way process, and that also is something I understood in the work of, in the way Professor Anand Kumar took his students very seriously. Like he said, from different parts of the country, their thesis, their works, the sensitivity to their background, and what constituency they represent, and so on. That it's a public sociology. It is realistic, and we call it grassroots level because it's not a one-way relationship where you read the books and dilute and present them in a easy language to the public. No, it's a two-way relationship, and that would be the best way to envisage a public sociology. And with these words, I will end here. But I think there is open-ended imagination with few broad principles allowing for regional variation is what we should take away from this scholar. Thank you.